2.0, New York City. We're a thriving community of folks that are focused on developing new healthcare applications and focusing on innovation. And we're happy to be here at NYU Stern School, and we want to thank Whitney and the Stern Healthcare Association for supporting us and having us host our event today. We're really extremely excited to have Todd Petrie, from a partner at Milestone Ventures, one of the leading venture capital companies in New York City, and very focused on healthcare companies. You'll see an assortment of companies that they've invested in over the years and new ones coming on board. And I think he's going to really be able to share a lot with you in terms of what it takes to really get a company off the ground and how to go about raising money, raising capital, which is very critical at different milestones within your startup. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it off, and Andre will ask a couple questions to get it started, and then we'll make this very interactive and allow you to ask questions as we go along as well. And please, let's have a great conversation, and we'll be about 40 minutes, I think we have. And let's get started. So Andre?
Cool. I have this.
Great.
Thanks, Anthony. As we prepare to watch all the pitches tonight, what are some things key characteristics we should look for a successful pitch?
Well, I'll give a little background on myself and the firm first, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay. So, again, the name's Todd Petrie. Our firm is Milestone Venture Partners. I'm being told I need to speak up. We're a venture capital firm. We manage over $100 million in a series of small funds, and we invest in early-stage software and data businesses. We have been in business for about 14, well, I guess Ed and I co-founded the firm, and we got together in late '99. We didn't get a fund up and running, making investments on behalf of our investors until 2001. But so we've been in business roughly 15 years. The original premise for the fund was to take advantage of New York City's unique assets. And we believed basically that New York was going to change from a place where you went to get money to a place where companies were started, and that the internet and other technologies were making that possible, because you didn't need quite the engineering pedigree of Route 128 in Boston or Silicon Valley to create applied technology companies. And what New York had, we thought, was a lot of talent, a lot of smart people, and also multiple impressive large industries with a lot of customers. And we thought that was an asset for early stage companies as they were trying to build their business. That's sort of the lifeblood and the currency of an early stage company, is securing customers. And so we believed that New York City would have a lot of advantages. So if you looked at the industries, financial services was obviously here. So there's a lot of rich customers in fintech. There was obviously a lot of digital media here. And then the one that was a little bit less obvious was that there was a lot of healthcare here. Generally speaking, healthcare is national. Wherever there are large concentrations of people and impressive universities, you're going to have interesting healthcare. But here you have a couple of things going for it. You had, from Philadelphia to New York City, the richest concentration of biopharma companies, pharma companies. So that was a whole sector you could go after. You had all the academic medical centers here, and they call York Avenue, Bedpan Alley. There are just so many, such a high percentage of the nation's physicians are trained here that we thought that was quite attractive. And then because of the financial services connection, you do have health insurance firms as well that you could go after, payers. And so that was our thesis, and we raised a couple of funds, and we started to make investments. And the stage we go after are companies that have early traction. So they have a product, they have some customers, they have some momentum, they have a thesis that we like, they have an entrepreneur that is dynamic and can attract a team. They might not have a full team, but they have the ability to build a team. around an important person, an impressive person, and that's when we come in. So it's usually after they've raised some money, a little bit of money, from friends and family or from customers, even better. That's the best way to finance a early stage business. But it's when they need money to flesh out the product and add sales and marketing, basically. And that's when we come in. We usually don't invest in companies that have already raised $5, $10, $15 million. Occasionally we will do that. It's usually companies that are looking for 1 to 5, and we'll do $500,000 to $4 million, depending on the stage and whether or not it's appropriate for our LPs, because sometimes we bring our LPs and write bigger checks. So that's kind of what we do. Now healthcare, how we got into healthcare is important, and I'm going to get to your question, is we made a good investment early on in the healthcare space. And that had a lot to do with how attractive we found the sector. If we had made a lousy investment as our first investment in healthcare, I'm not sure we would have pursued it with such gusto. But we did make a good investment in healthcare. It was a company that sold software to pharmaceutical companies to help them collect data in clinical trials. And it was called Medidata. It's based here in New York City. And it had about $1 million in revenue. And it was just, it was an early stage company. And it was such a great experience that we started to look around and we said, gosh, there are real problems in healthcare that remarkably obvious problems. And if you can solve those problems, there is not a ton of competition. And frankly, from our perspective, and this was good for us, there wasn't a lot of competition. In fact, a lot of the firms that knew the most about healthcare, life sciences companies that were funding drugs and device companies, which we do not do, a lot of those partners were turned off by health IT. They had funded some of those businesses during the bubble, the kind of 95 to 2000, and they had gotten burned. They had not made money in the sector, and they said, this is a loser. We don't want to fund these businesses. And so there was a nice window where we could invest in companies and we take our time and evaluate them and then make good investments. Now you have to move a lot faster because there's a lot more competition. But there's also, on the flip side, there's a lot more companies. So that's kind of some background on us. We've gone on to invest in 17 different healthcare technology companies, and we've exited 6 of them, and we're quite active in the space. We've invested in a couple of accelerators. Well, I should say 1 accelerator, 2 classes, the New York Digital Health Accelerator. So, what should we be looking for tonight? I'm always looking first, this is going to be an early stage pitch, right? So when it's an early stage pitch, it's much about the entrepreneur's charisma and kind of ability to project, the excitement of the market opportunity and their ability to solve the problems in that market and the momentum that they have. I mean, that's what it's all about. But a lot of times for an early stage, a super early stage company in an environment like this, sometimes you go with the entrepreneur as opposed to necessarily, having everything buttoned down on the business. Like, I can remember being in actually it was an NYU competition, I believe, some time back. And an entrepreneur was going after something in the diabetes space. And the diabetes space is a very hard space to make money. And we have the one space, actually we've lost money in 2 deals in the healthcare space. One of them is in diabetes. And it's sort of a trap in a sense because it's this huge market, but it's very hard to succeed in it.
Right.
And so there's an individual going after it. It was I think Frank Rimolofsky had put together a program. I forget exactly the program, but you guys probably know Frank. And this entrepreneur, he was just quite compelling, and it was one of these situations where I didn't have a high degree of confidence in his particular business based on bad personal experience, but I was kind of going with the entrepreneur. But I think that the best pitches make the market opportunity exciting, high growth and kind of inevitable. There's certain. I once gave this feedback to an entrepreneur. I said, you want the market opportunity and your ability to capitalize on that opportunity to be inevitable. And they kind of scratched their head and they were giving me some kind of poking fun at me, saying, I'll have to get back to you on the inevitability factor. But there is a certain, when a market is emerging, you need to convey how that market is opening up. and how what you're doing is quick to solve the problems in that market, and what you're doing is already having some success. If you look at all these startup accelerators like Blueprint, Startup Health, Dream It, Healthbox, you'll notice that there's a bit of a formula in these pitches. They do not focus on the competition. That's one thing you'll notice. They'll never, because usually they're in spaces that have tons of competitors.
Right.
And they've decided, for better or for worse, and I think mostly for better, I've kind of come around to this way of thinking, in a 5 to 10 minute format, you just can't address all of the competition. So they're usually ignored. And I think that's okay because it's a short presentation. So you have to sort of set aside the competition in one of these pitches, and you have to talk about how exciting the market opportunity is, how you're addressing that problem in a differentiated way that is sustainable and creates barriers. And then, frankly, you talk about your traction. So a lot of these demo days are about unveiling a key customer and unveiling the fact that you've already got investors interested. So not only do we have this customer, but we've just announced this customer, and we're raising $500,000, and $375,000 is already spoken for. It's like,
Right.
get in now because the window is narrowing. There's not much left. These are the tricks of the trade, and I think that you'll see some of that tonight, I would think. The accelerators really emphasize these points. So I think those are some of the things that we think about.
Okay, cool. Thank you. You mentioned like people focusing on the competition during their pitch.
They don't.
As a pitfall.
They blow it off. They
Okay.
really do. It's a pitfall, but it's an understandable pitfall.
Okay.
You know.
What are some other like common pitfalls that people sometimes fall into?
You know,
when
I
they're-
think that in the health space there is a tendency to relate. I'm not sure it's a pitfall. It's a risk. It's a calculated risk. In the health space, entrepreneurs sometimes will tell a personal anecdote about a family member, something that's affected them personally, and I think it's a little hard to do well. So I think you have to be careful about doing it, because if you've been to enough of these pitches, you hear enough of those anecdotes, and sometimes it's hard. All of a sudden, you almost have to put your guard up. Like, wait a second, okay, I'm giving an emotional cue. I need to try to be objective. Yeah, I don't know. I think that is a risk. It can be done well. I don't think that it's always done well, and I think that you're probably better off sticking to the business at hand with the time, the small amount of time you have.
Right. Thank you. So for a new venture, when do you think is the right time for them to approach a VC firm?
I think that you can't summarize or generalize. It's really firm specific or category specific. And I can speak to our case, and I'll try to speak to some of the other cases, but I know this less well. So in our case, the perfect time to approach us is when, like I say, you've got a product, it works, customers are using it, customers may be paying for it, hopefully they're paying for it, and there are prospects that are interested in buying it. But it's not so early that we're basically going to say, listen, we're going to take 6 months to look at this, or a year, because sometimes you get sort of lost in the shuffle. If you go too early, then we might forget about it. They may forget to follow up with us,
Right.
Although I'm happy to take those meetings. And if we're doing our job, we are following them, calling up in 6 months, but we don't always do it. So ideally, they're closing business. So it takes a long time to get the meeting set up, to have the meeting, to have the follow-up calls. Time elapses. And so the perfect timing to hit us is when, as time is elapsing, the company is closing business. They're getting customers online. Customers, an early customer is now expanding. That's impressive to us, because hey, they come in, they tell the pitch, they say, that sounds pretty interesting, that sounds pretty good. And we say, well, what about this, and what about that, and what about this? And they say they have their answers, but then they ping us 4 weeks later and say, that prospect I was telling you about, they have signed. I mean, that all of a sudden you have a lot of credibility. It's like something you said was going to happen happened, and it happened fast, and gosh, isn't this great? So that's sort of the early, it's called, for us it's early traction is when we like to see them. But not all firms are that way. That would be way too early from the vast bulk of the firms in this space. And the vast bulk of the firms in this space are growth equity investors, and they are looking for $5 to $10 million of revenue. Now, a lot of those firms have decided, well, gosh, those are hard to come by, and there's a lot of people that want to do those, and so maybe I'm going to start looking at $2, $3, $4 million of revenue type companies. And so, you know, for them, that makes sense. For a seed investor, I think most seed investors, professional seed investors at least, they are looking for a little bit of traction. So while they're not looking for all the proof points that we have, you know, I do think that they're looking to see, like, you know, in the first meeting, you know, let's log on and see what you got, you know?
Right.
They're not, I don't, not always, but I think a lot of them are, especially the consumer-focused ones. I mean, you know, it doesn't cost a lot necessarily to put something together, put it on the web, and see if people are using it, you know? So I think that helps a lot. If there's something to show, it may be nascent, it may be really a sketch, but it's something that you can show that's quasi-live. I think that's important for a lot of folks. You know, so I think even for a lot of the seed investors, they're looking for something to be done on the product side. Not always true. And there are angel investors who are just backing the individual.
Right.
And they're prepared to wait 6 months to a year for that to happen.
Right.
And so, you know, it's a food chain. It's a food chain of firms that have found, you know, a lot of the seed guys maybe used to invest where we invest, and they say, gosh, if you wait till a company has a product and these customers and so forth, the prices are going to be so much higher. I'd rather put a small amount of money in a bunch of different companies before they get to that point at a low valuation, such that if one of them really pops, I can make a lot of money. You know, whereas we prefer to have fewer investments in our portfolio that are more concentrated. We're kind of taking a bet, and we're going to work with that company and try to make it successful. And we don't want to have as many wipeouts. You know, it's just different risk tolerance, different styles of investing for different firms. And so I don't think you can generalize as to when is the right time to approach a firm.
Okay. So it just depends on.
It depends on the firm. You got to do your
firm.
research. You got to do, and I think you were also going to ask me how to get in.
Right. When's the best time to approach a firm?
Or how do you approach? So that's the other thing is that first off, I think that you really do have to do some research. And fortunately today it's easy to do research. There's Twitter, there's blogs, there's LinkedIn, there's the bio, there's the portfolio that firm has, but there's the individual companies that a specific partner is associated with. So I think, you know, the best way to get in is to get a great referral and to do your research. So, and there's some art in getting the referral. Like, for instance, someone might say, hey, I can get you a referral in to see such and such partner at such and such firm. And the entrepreneur might think, that's great. But it might turn out that referral source sends a lot of stuff, not so good stuff.
Right.
And you can just see the general partner's eyes roll as this email comes in. You know, kind of like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this? Versus, I'll tell you, the perfect referral source is someone who is really astute in these companies, knows the partner well, it does not send that much, but what he or she sends is very good. And let's say they're an investor in your fund, because if they're an investor in your fund,
Right.
I mean, you'll do anything. I mean, you'll look at anything, right, for that investor. So you're going to get a response. But if that person who's referring is got really good judgment and they've been making good referrals, they've been making good investments, and they're referring something, it's a double whammy. It's like, hey, I need to respond to make my investor happy, and I better look at this because I bet it's pretty interesting. So, you know, those are some of the ways. But if you don't know an investor in our fund, there are other people. There are accountants, there's lawyers, there's entrepreneurs, there's other investors. And then I think that it even makes, I think to go one step further, let's say you find a reasonably good referral source, then you start to do a little bit of research on the specific portfolio companies of that firm and the specific partners of that firm, because different partners have different interests.
Right.
And so so if you do a little bit of research, I remember one of our early investments in healthcare, not our earliest, but one of our early investments, was in a company called CareGain, and it was a company that helped health insurance companies, create consumer-directed health plan offerings for their members, which is a huge trend today. We actually invested in this company in 2003. It was before its time, but it was a good investment. It worked out. But I remember that the investment banker was sharp in that when they came in, they said, listen, I think you're going to like this business. I'd like to take a look at it. It reminds me of, I think you're going to understand this business because you've already made an investment in XYZ company. In this case, it was Expert Plan, another company of ours that was kind of in the corporate benefits space. And you know, if one of your portfolio companies is mentioned, and it was actually an interesting comment, it's like, hey, this person's actually taken the time to figure out what we've invested in
Right.
and why what they're showing us is like something else we've done and why we might get it. And so, I don't know, it just leaps off the page, you know, versus just, you know, generic description of an opportunity. So, you know, you sort of personalize the intro and the way you navigate in there. That said, listen, we do try to get back to companies that are approaching us that have not been referred in. I mean, there are some firms, they literally don't look at them. You know, they have too many, and they just can't get to them, and so they just don't look at them because it's over the transom. In our case, we try to look at them, and sometimes we do. You know, you can sort of tell when the entrepreneur's done their homework and it's a fit. It has to be incredibly succinct, though. I mean, just in the first sentence or two or three, it has to lay a hook.
Right. What about at events such as this? Do you feel like that's a good place for VCs to find possible companies?
For us, less so because we're investing at a little bit later stage. But that said, I'm meeting people, I'm making a connection. You know, if the company that is presenting or the person I meet, we have an exchange, and then they follow up, and then down the road, they're at a point where it's appropriate for us, and they say, you know, do you remember that startup competition? We met, we talked briefly,
Right.
and, you know, yeah, I mean, I think that helps. But we don't necessarily find a lot of companies that fit our criteria at these events. But it has happened.
Okay.
It has happened.
Cool. And last question before I open it up to the audience. What trends have you been seeing in the healthcare startup space and in the digital startup space?
So in the healthcare startup space, from a technology angle, the holy trinity, you know, it's cloud, it's mobile, it's analytics. I mean, data analytics, it's mobile, it's cloud. You know, those are the growth drivers for so many startups. And they tend to have something going on in one of those three areas. In terms of the healthcare perspective, there's a couple of macro trends that you see over and over again. One is convergence. The silos of biopharma, providers, and payors and consumers, they're no longer discrete, siloed affairs anymore. They are, the barriers are breaking down. So biopharma wants to do, can't and won't in the future just sell a drug or device. There's a companion diagnostic, but more importantly, there's oftentimes now companion apps and or services. And so that is a trend. And so pharma is reaching out. They are trying to, they're trying to work with new data sets that are not commonly found in the biopharma space. They're trying to work with data sets that are, let's say, in an electronic health record database. So that barrier is coming down. Providers, physicians, hospitals, they are assuming more risk in the future in their payments. They're going to take subscriptions, take care of a population, and if they are successful in taking care of that population, they will make more money. But when so a hospitalization of one of their patients, rather than an event which makes them money, it becomes an event which costs them money. So that's a huge change. And assisting providers to assume risk like that is a big trend. Similarly, health insurance firms are getting into the provider space. So you have the division between provider and payer breaking down. So that's an important development. You know, payment reform is huge. Care coordination is huge. All these things are related, you know, but taking care of chronically ill patients, the comorbid patients. I mean, the mental health startup challenge today, you know, there's now the recognition that patients that have mental illness are much more costly, and they tend to have not just one problem, they have multiple problems.
Right.
And you know, addressing the whole care of that patient, including mental health, including some of the social factors, is an important part of taking care of these patients. And so, I think that's a big trend. But in order to do that, you have to have disparate entities cooperate and work together. And then the only way that can be done is with technology. So in New York State spends more per capita on Medicaid than any state in the country. They spend about $50 billion. And New York State cannot afford it. And New York State is going to reform how it pays for Medicaid. And it is going to a capitated approach. They're going to give providers a fixed amount to take care of a patient. And so they've gotten a waiver from the federal government, about $6 billion, to experiment and innovate and try to figure out how to do this. So a lot of it involves getting the social worker, the behavioral health provider, the primary care physician, the specialist, the hospital, all working together, sharing data, sharing tasks. And it's very difficult. It's a very hard problem.
Right.
But you see a lot in that. You need mobile technology to do that. You need data technology. You need communications technology. You need a lot of technologies. You need security. That's another trend I would say, is that one thing that we try to do in our business is, because we are technology investors and healthcare investors, we try to identify companies that would be successful outside of healthcare and then help them get into healthcare. So security, HR, cloud, you know, these are companies that they can sell to anyone,
Right.
but if they adapt their technologies to solve the unique problems of healthcare, they can be very successful in healthcare.
Right.
So that's a theme that we try to. I mean, that the Anthem breach, 80 million Social Security numbers. You know,
Right.
it's a problem. Actually, I'm not sure that they did get the Social Security numbers in that, but $80 million people had their PHI compromised, and so, you know, security companies are going to have a heyday in health.
Right. Especially with something in health that's very private to everyone involved, and they want to make sure that their health is actually secure on the cloud.
Exactly.
If they're involved. So at this time, I would like to open it up for anyone who has questions.
Yes.
So a lot of us are MBA students at Stern, and so I was wondering, as we look into the job market, you know, what advice do you have for us in terms of how we can identify a company that we should work for, and what functions do you think we as business students maximize value?
Let's see. How do you identify companies? You know, I think you should treat it as an investment. You should do diligence on it just as an angel investor or an institutional investor would do, in that you would want to study the people involved, the opportunity they're going after, the quality of their solution, the quality of their customers, the momentum that they have, the financing that they have, their ability to secure future financing, their vision, their product vision, and you know, do all of that. And that involves oftentimes using your Rolodex. You're making networks of connections here that will serve you well the rest of your life. And you know, and you're more networked electronically than, you know, any class, you know, that's come before you. So you'll be able to call on people that are in positions to give you insights into whether or not, you know, the company in question is a good bet. And I would avail yourself of that, you know, and also you should do some Columbo work. I'm dating myself there, but you know, try to find out, you know, who are their customers, and maybe you can speak to some of the people there and see if they're using the technology, and, you know, is it work? In my case, technology. It doesn't have to be technology, but, you know, are the customers satisfied, and, you know, are they using the service or product successfully? In terms of the other part of your question was what advice you would have, I would have?
On functional areas.
Oh, functional areas, okay. So in terms of functional areas, I think the most interesting job, this is a hard thing to get into, but I think it's product. It's easy to say business development. It's easy to say finance, you know, a CFO role, a business development role. That's easy to say. But you know, a lot of times, unless you're a CPA, you may not want to be a controller or a CFO, or have everything you need to be that. In case of business development, I mean, let's face it, business development is a tricky position. You know, I mean, is business development sales, or is business development partnerships? You know, if it's sales and you like sales and you want to be in sales, I think sales is a great place to be because I think you can make an immediate impact. And you can get going quickly, make money, and then pivot to something else, because companies need good salespeople. But a lot of MBA students I've noticed are not that interested in sales, or they don't really want to be called sales. It's not their thing. So a lot of times they'll say, "Well, I'll do business development." Now, business development sounds good. It's like you're doing M&A partnerships. Well, by the way, I'm speaking for mainly startup-oriented, early-stage companies. It's different at a bigger company, but you know, a lot of times there's not enough to do in business development at an early-stage venture-backed company. You know, and it's hard to measure success. You know, there aren't that many partnerships you can do. It's hard to measure how much value you've added. That's why actually I prefer sales, because it's objective. You know, business development, it's sort of a position that can be expendable. You know, and so I think business development is tricky. I mean, it can be a great position, don't get me wrong, but it's not a great position at that many companies at an early stage. So I think product is the most interesting area because it combines your working, it requires business analysis, okay? In other words, this company can do a million different things. They can, but they don't have the money or the resources to do a million different things. What are the 3 things that matter most? When you survey the customers, you survey the competitive landscape, and you survey what customers are willing to pay for and what your tech team is able to build. You know, so that's an analysis. You know, so you have to be very analytical, and it uses all the business you know, talents of an MBA student to figure that out. Now then next, all the group work that you do as an MBA translate, because you're now going to have to communicate that effectively to the development team and get the development team actually executing on that and delivering it. And so to me, it's like the heart of, and to me, the most interesting executives now are the CEOs, are the ones that have a product background, because they can navigate between development and the customer. You know, they actually can sit in between and speak both languages, and it can be very creative. It can be very creative too, because you know, you're trying to think about how to best build the best product. So I like product a lot. Listen, if you're trying to get a job at a consulting firm, I think you know as well as I do how to do that. Investment banking firm, I think you know. By the way, I will say that if you haven't worked at an investment bank or a consulting firm, it can be just an incredible education independently. You know, so I do think there's some merit in that. You know, especially if you work for one of the better ones, because there's a little bit of sheen you can put on your resume that you'll be able to leverage, just like you know, your Stern MBA. You know, you worked at XYZ, you know, impressive firm, and that can carry through the rest of your life. And you can also get a great education. I do think that, you know, working in that environment, if you haven't already done it, you can learn a lot very quickly. Is it something that you're going to want to do the rest of your life? Oftentimes it's not, because of the lifestyle and because, you know, it's difficult to make it work long term at those firms. But I like product.
We have a question over there.
Yeah. Well, I think you're going to.
just
Like that's-
repeat the question.
Okay, I mean, I think the question is, do I know of any technologies that have to do with the mental health and chronic health problems that, like diabetes, depression, suicide, et cetera? And well, that's largely what we're here for tonight at this event. I think that you'll see a number of them. And yes, I see them all the time. Now, are they succeeding? I mean, most of them are not, because it's hard to succeed. But there's some really impressive businesses being built to address these issues, and many will succeed. So I think it's a fruitful area, and that's why I'm interested in it. Yes.
You talked a little bit about trying to get people who have these solid backgrounds in security or whatever into healthcare.
Yeah.
So what about people who are entrepreneurs, or maybe in the case of students, aspiring entrepreneurs, but maybe just be considering health startups? What's the value pool for them? Like, why should they go the healthcare field?
I think they're doing it. They're doing it in droves.
I'm saying if you're considering it.
Why should they do it?
Yeah.
I think it's a large sector of our economy that is growing. That and these problems are multi-decade type problems that need to be attacked, and something's got to give. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think that you should go in with your eyes wide open. It is not an easy sector. I think that a lot of folks come into the sector focusing on providers, and selling software and data to providers is not an easy thing to do. Hospitals, physician practices, these are difficult animals to navigate and to make sales. So I have a bias toward companies in this space which have the opportunity to not only sell, they have the opportunity to sell to multiple constituents. They can sell to payers, they can sell to health insurance firms, they can sell to self-insured employers, they can sell to providers, biopharma. I mean, in other words, there's optionality. Because I think that there are a lot of companies focusing on, hey, we're going to sell something to a hospital, and selling things to hospitals is really, really hard. And plus, hospitals are really shrinking. That's the problem with our healthcare system. Hospitals are too expensive. We're trying to move care outside of the hospital.
Yeah.
And so I think the other thing that we have to all be aware of is that payment reform is the big macro theme, compensating physicians for the quality of care they provide as opposed to the quantity or volume of care. This is a very big trend, macro trend. We're not really there yet, and so I think we'll be there 5 years from now. There'll be something really, but even like a year or two, it's going to take a while, because right now we've got sort of reform initiatives where providers have 1 3/4 feet in fee for service, and not even a quarter in fee for value. So I think you have to learn about the space, and but there's a lot of opportunity. I do think that there is a lot of opportunity for consumer-facing solutions. I mean, right now, I think that the statistic is that the average premium is $16,000, health insurance premium. I want to say for a family. It should be for a family, but I'm not exactly sure. And right now, risk is being shifted onto the consumer. Okay, so an employer might pay 30% of that, but then the employee or the consumer is being given a consumer-directed health plan. So there's several $1,000s that the consumer is going to have to incur as a cost before insurance kicks in, and so consumers today don't really think about their health care costs very, very well, but as that bite in their wallet increases and increases, at some point, they're going to get serious about it. They're going to say, wait a second, I just got to figure this out. I got to log on and use a tool that's going to help get this done. I want a good quality provider. I want it to be fast. I want it to be effective. I want it to be cost effective, and I want their information. And so, I think that right today, consumers don't think that way, but I think that they will. And so I think that's a big opportunity. It's hard to get consumers to pay for things, but I think that will emerge as an opportunity. Yes? Yeah, so what's the impact of wearable technology, the Apple Watch launch, the significance thereof? We invested in a company called MapMyFitness, which has the Map My Run and Map My Ride app, and we sold it. We backed it. It was based in Austin. It was a great experience, and we co-invested with a larger venture firm on it, and the company provides these apps that you can download for free. And then the way we were really monetizing that business was by selling ads for the most part. We had some paid apps, we had some paid subscriptions, but that's basically how we monetized it. But our goal was to get as many users using it as possible and to get as much engagement as possible. And we had some contracts with payers. Humana had a division called Vitality, which is a corporate wellness business. And they wanted us to build their back end for all of their corporate wellness customers that would have Fitbits and other wearable devices to plug into a common platform. And we decided in the case of this business that was not the right path. It was too hard to make Humana happy and our consumers happy. So we decided to make the consumers happy. And we ended up selling that to Under Armour. And Under Armour paid $150 million for that business. And since then, they have purchased MyFitnessPal for over $400 million. And they also bought Endomondo, which is a European version of MapMyFitness, for $80 million. And the interesting thing about that business, by the way, the team that we backed, Robin Thurston, he runs digital now for all of Under Armour. And Under Armour is just an incredible business. They were run by a visionary leader. And what was really fascinating about that business is that they could prove that they could sell more goods to active users that are engaged on these mobile solutions. And so for them, it really translated. It was really a definite payoff and return on investment. I think that there are a lot of venture capitalists that are skeptical of the idea that the healthy, is a great healthcare opportunity. You know what I'm saying? In other words, if we're healthy people measuring their 5, 10K runs, that's not where the money is. In other words, the money is in the chronically ill people.
Right.
So, different perspectives. I think as a consumer device, it's going to be very important. I think that the first version doesn't have the sensor technology in there that's going to make it transformative. I think it's going to come out in subsequent iterations. They had to make some compromises. They're not monitoring all the things they need to be monitoring to make it a huge win. And so, I rely on my 11-year-old son, 13-year-old daughter a little bit for barometers in this. They don't like the design. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out if it's really going to be a huge hit. They're just like, didn't move it for them. And so I think the design is a huge piece of this. And I'm not going to buy one right away. I'm going to let it percolate. But I'm excited about it. They've reached out to the best of the best, the Cleveland clinics, the Mayo clinics. They're doing deals with very important healthcare. But we've seen that before. We saw Google. We saw Microsoft try to do these personal health record portal businesses, and they bagged them. It didn't work. They're not really B2B companies, and so I don't know. Short answer.
Just want to do a time check.
Are we ready to roll? Something else?
I don't know. All right, I guess we have time for one more question.
What are some of the steps that you take after investing in the company to help it grow?
To help it grow? Well, what we do is, kind of like the characteristics of the product person I mentioned before, the characteristics of the product job, trying to identify what are the true priorities. That's what we do at the board level. What are the 3 strategic priorities? Whereas at the product level, you might be thinking about the 3 key modules or features or whatever, capabilities. At the board level, you're thinking about what are the 3 value drivers for the business, because we can't attack all of them. So first off, it's about setting priorities and having a healthy debate about what those are and getting consensus on it, and then appropriately resourcing, allocating resources to those priorities. But a lot of what I do is, a business is a complex living organism, and there's a lot of human dynamics, and frequently you are missing key ingredients in the management team, and so you need to identify what those are and then go out and try to get those people. And we have people approaching us, and this just happened, and actually just happened in product. I served on a board. It was actually a diabetes software company that wasn't so successful, but it was an interesting board, and one of the board members was a very smart person, and he, out of the blue, sent me a resume. And he said, listen, I employed this person, and she was an incredible product person, and I think you should, she's interested in one of your companies, and I think you should connect them. And I connected them to 4 of my companies, and 2 of them made offers to her. And so, and they were really struggling to find this product person. So I try to help fill holes in the management team. But that's a little bit rare. Oftentimes it's like, okay, we've narrowed down the hire to these 3 people. I want you to interview them and give me your honest gut feel. And do you know anyone that knows them, and can you check them out and stuff like that? So there's that. So there's the human resource, there's prioritization, there's human resources. We are seeing a lot of opportunities, and so part of it is, hey, should we be getting into this business? Should we be partnering with this business? Should we be acquiring this business? Those kinds of things. So kind of business development, M&A, Then there's, capital structure, Okay, so we've got $6 million of senior debt. We're gonna raise equity. We need some more money to get to that point. How can we do it? We can go to existing investors who will invest in equity or a bridge. There are venture debt providers that are kind of sub-debt or mezzanine folks. Then there are sort of next generation senior debt providers. So interview these guys. Give me your recommendation, cost of capital, et cetera. Sort of stuff like that. Or you're doing an equity raise, and all right, who do you know that would want to invest in a company like us at this stage? So we do a lot of that. What else do we do? I think that we also try to decide when it makes sense to exit. When is a good time? Should we be seeking an exit now? And what do we have to do to be ready for an exit? So which investment bankers should we be talking to? Which buyers should we be cultivating? What should we look like to be the best possible acquisition target? Or it may be the opposite, which is, yes, you're getting inquiries to be acquired, but no, we should not exit now. It's too early. This is a great business. We should let it run.
Cool. All right, at this time, we're going to move on to the pitches. Thank you, Todd, so much for your insight.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, everybody. We're going to have some networking and take advantage of some refreshments over there, and we'll get started at about 7 o'clock. Okay, thank you.